For years, charging cables were a mess. Phones, tablets, laptops, headphones, cameras, and countless other devices all used different connectors. Some were large, some were fragile, some only worked in one direction, and many were incompatible with anything else you owned. Most people accepted this as normal. But then something unusual happened. Manufacturers around the world began switching to the same charging port. Devices that once used proprietary connectors suddenly adopted USB-C. Even companies that had resisted standardization for years eventually followed. This shift did not happen by accident. It was the result of technical limitations, consumer frustration, industry pressure, and eventually, regulation. To understand why everyone was forced to use USB-C, we need to look at what came before it and why those older systems stopped working. Early electronic devices were not designed with universality in mind. Each manufacturer optimized for their own hardware, their own accessories, and their own ecosystem. This gave companies more control, but created chaos for users. Cables broke easily. Ports wore out. Compatibility was rare. Travel meant carrying multiple chargers. Replacements were expensive and sometimes impossible to find. USB was originally created to reduce this complexity. The first versions of USB introduced the idea of a universal connector for data and power. It worked well for basic devices like keyboards, mice, and storage drives. But as devices became smaller and more powerful, the original USB connectors began to show their limits. They were bulky. They required correct orientation. They delivered limited power. And they could not scale easily as technology advanced. Manufacturers responded by creating smaller connectors. Some of these were still based on USB standards, while others were entirely proprietary. This solved short-term design problems, but made the overall ecosystem worse. The result was a fragmented landscape where cables were not interchangeable and ports were inconsistent. USB-C was designed to fix this. From the beginning, USB-C was built with future use in mind. It is reversible, meaning it works no matter which way you plug it in. It supports significantly higher power delivery, allowing it to charge everything from small earbuds to full-size laptops. It also supports high-speed data transfer, video output, and even docking station functionality. One port could do almost everything. But technical superiority alone does not guarantee adoption. For years, many manufacturers continued using older ports or proprietary connectors. Switching meant redesigning hardware, retraining support teams, and potentially losing accessory revenue. So why did the switch eventually become unavoidable? The first reason was scale. As USB-C adoption increased, accessory makers began focusing on it exclusively. Chargers, cables, hubs, monitors, and power banks were increasingly built around USB-C. Devices that did not support it began to feel outdated very quickly. Consumers noticed the difference. A single USB-C charger could now power multiple devices. A single cable could handle charging, data, and video. The convenience gap became obvious. The second reason was efficiency. USB-C reduced manufacturing complexity. Instead of producing multiple ports, cables, and accessories, companies could standardize around one system. This lowered costs, simplified logistics, and reduced design constraints. Over time, it became more expensive not to adopt USB-C. The third reason was environmental pressure. Electronic waste became a growing concern. Millions of chargers and cables were being discarded every year, simply because they were incompatible with new devices. This waste was not accidental. It was the direct result of fragmented standards. Regulators began paying attention. In several regions, lawmakers argued that forcing a common charging standard would reduce waste, lower costs for consumers, and improve usability. USB-C was already widely adopted, technically capable, and industry supported. That made it the obvious choice. Once regulation entered the picture, resistance faded quickly. Companies could either comply voluntarily or be forced to adapt later under stricter rules. Most chose the first option. But the story is not just about regulation. USB-C also represents a shift in how technology is designed. Instead of building devices around fixed functions, manufacturers began designing systems that could adapt. USB-C is not just a connector. It is a framework that allows devices to negotiate power, data, and roles dynamically. A laptop can charge a phone. A monitor can power a computer. A single cable can replace an entire docking station. Older connectors were not designed for that level of flexibility. Another important factor is longevity. USB-C was built to last across multiple generations of devices. While older ports were replaced frequently, USB-C was designed with enough headroom to support future improvements without changing the physical connector. This protects consumers from constant upgrades and protects manufacturers from repeated redesigns. There is also a psychological element. Once users experience the simplicity of one cable that works everywhere, tolerance for anything else drops sharply. What once felt normal now feels inconvenient. That shift in expectation is powerful. It creates pressure that no single company can ignore. At that point, standardization becomes inevitable. It is important to understand that USB-C did not win because it was forced first. It was forced because it had already won. The regulation followed adoption, not the other way around. By the time rules were discussed, USB-C was already the most capable and widely supported option available. Lawmakers did not invent a standard. They formalized one that already existed. This distinction matters. It explains why USB-C succeeded where earlier attempts at standardization failed. Those earlier systems tried to impose uniformity before the technology was ready. USB-C succeeded because it solved real problems first. Today, USB-C is still evolving. Power limits continue to increase. Data speeds improve. New capabilities are added without changing the connector itself. This is exactly what it was designed to do. So when it feels like everyone was forced to use USB-C, the reality is more subtle. Manufacturers were pushed by technology, pulled by consumers, and eventually guided by regulation. All three forces aligned. USB-C was not just better, it was inevitable. And that is why it became the standard connector for modern devices.